in a political moment that will be remembered as both an end and a warning. President Donald Trump has officially signed the bipartisan funding bill that ends the longest federal government shutdown in United States history, a standoff that froze the machinery of government for 43 days and tested the boundaries of executive power, congressional negotiation, and public patience. Global Glimpse begins this deep dive by asking, what does the end of this historic shutdown really tell us about the state of American governance? The signing, which came late Wednesday evening, followed days of tense back and forth between congressional leaders in the White House as pressure from unpaid federal workers, economic forecasts, and public opinion reached a breaking point. The deal restores funding for all major federal agencies, returns hundreds of thousands of furloughed employees to work, and releases back pay that many families had been anxiously awaiting. Yet beneath this moment of relief lies a deeper narrative, one about political brinkmanship, institutional fragility, and the evolving nature of power in Washington. The shutdown, lasting 6 weeks, began over a deadlock concerning spending priorities, particularly disputes surrounding healthcare subsidies, border security measures, and budgetary caps under the Fiscal Responsibility Act. For weeks, federal operations slowed to a crawl, national parks closed, food assistance programs were disrupted, and airport operations grew chaotic as unpaid TSA agents and air traffic controllers struggled to keep critical systems running. Economists estimate the shutdown cost the U.S. economy billions of dollars in lost productivity, a figure that underscores how political gridlock has tangible effects on ordinary lives. More than an economic setback, however, this episode became a referendum on governance itself, a test of whether the world's oldest modern democracy could still function under extreme partisan strain. In the Senate and House, the final deal drew bipartisan support, with leaders from both parties framing it as an act of pragmatism rather than victory. The legislation funds the government through January 2026 and includes full-year appropriations for essential sectors such as veterans, care, national defense, and education. In a notable clause, it also establishes a bipartisan commission to recommend long-term fiscal reforms, signaling at least a symbolic commitment to address the recurring budget crises that have plagued Washington for decades. Still, many lawmakers concede that this compromise is a bandage, not a cure. The ideological divides that caused the shutdown from social spending priorities to the limits of presidential authority remain as deep as ever. The political implications are immediate and far-reaching. For President Trump, signing the bill marks both a concession and a recalibration. Polling during the shutdown showed a sharp dip in his approval rating, particularly among independents and moderate Republicans frustrated with prolonged instability. Yet the administration has framed the deal as a necessary reset, emphasizing its role in restoring order and preserving critical government functions. For congressional Democrats, the outcome represents a strategic validation of negotiation over confrontation. Even as progressive members warn that recurring compromises risk normalizing executive overreach, in essence, both sides emerge declaring partial victory, but neither can claim a mandate. The deeper story, however, lies in the erosion of institutional trust. According to recent Gallup data, only about 1 in 4 Americans express confidence in the federal government's ability to do what is right. The shutdown amplified this skepticism, revealing how political dysfunction can erode not just the effectiveness of government, but also the belief that it can serve its citizens at all. Civil servants from park rangers to policy analysts became symbols of a system caught in the crossfire of partisan agendas. Many voiced frustration that their work, though essential, had become collateral damage in power struggles far removed from everyday realities. This disconnect between policymakers and public servants highlights a growing rift in American political culture, one between governance as service and politics as spectacle. From a constitutional standpoint, the shutdown and its resolution underscore the fragile equilibrium between Congress and the presidency. Legal scholars note that while Congress holds the power of the purse, the executive branch wields control over implementation, a dynamic that invites confrontation when trust breaks down. During the shutdown, debates flared over whether the president could invoke emergency powers to bypass legislative approval, a possibility that alarmed both Democrats and constitutional conservatives. The eventual compromise reaffirmed Congress's budgetary authority. but also demonstrated how easily that authority can be undermined by political brinkmanship. Some experts warn that repeated shutdowns normalize constitutional stress tests, gradually shifting power toward the executive through crisis-driven governance. The social consequences of the shutdown are equally significant. Beyond lost paychecks and delayed benefits, the episode deepened national fatigue with political extremism. Surveys conducted in late October showed rising concern over government dysfunction, surpassing even inflation and healthcare as a top voter issue. This suggests that Americans are increasingly viewing effective governance not as an ideological question, but as a moral one, a matter of collective responsibility and institutional integrity. That shift could shape the tone of the 2026 midterm elections, where both parties will be judged not only on policy, but on their perceived capacity to govern competently. Internationally, the shutdown drew concern from allies and competitors alike. European and Asian markets watched nervously as the world's largest economy appeared paralyzed. The International Monetary Fund even revised U.S. growth projections downward, citing political instability as a key risk factor. For adversarial states, the episode offered propaganda fodder, reinforcing narratives of democratic dysfunction. Yet paradoxically, the eventual resolution, through lawmaking and compromise rather than decree, also reaffirmed the resilience of American institutions, however strained. The message was clear: democracy may stumble, but it does not surrender easily. As President Trump signed the bill surrounded by congressional leaders, the scene carried both relief and unease. Relief that the crisis had ended, unease that it could so easily return. The ink on the signature symbolized more than just reopening government offices. It marked a temporary ceasefire in an ongoing struggle over how America governs itself. The next fiscal confrontation may already be on the horizon, but for now, the machinery of democracy turns once more, imperfect, noisy, yet unbroken. And so, as Global Glimpse closes this deep dive, we leave with a question that extends beyond the walls of the Capitol. How sustainable is a system that governs only when forced by crisis? This moment, the end of the longest shutdown in U.S. history, offers both a warning and a lesson. Governance cannot thrive on confrontation alone. It requires trust, patience, and the shared belief that compromise is not weakness, but the foundation of democracy itself. Thank you for watching Global Glimpse, where we break down the laws, decisions, and power struggles shaping America's future.